This was sort of interesting. Ainsley Earhardt shows some shock at a number that is actually quite shocking. Over the course of our, coronavirus spring and summer, about 340,000 children tested positive since the pandemic began. Now, you don't get children tested that much. They don't exhibit symptoms more often than not, or they don't have any symptoms. So it's not terribly surprising that over the course of the time, 340,000, we have well over 5 million cases. What is a little bit shocking is that almost 100,000 of that 340,000 number, remember the pandemic started in mid-March. I think that's where they're counting from. That is April, May, June, July. So 4 solid months plus 2 half months, 5 months, about 20 weeks ago, 340,000 over the course of 20 weeks. Almost 100,000 of those came in the last 2 weeks of July. So there's been a significant uptick. Maybe it's a function of parents just suddenly deciding they want to take their kids to get tested. But here's Ainsley Earhardt, sort of just like, wait, what? That's not what we've been telling people on our network.
All worried about sending our kids back to school. What is that going to look like for our country and for our elderly grandparents and things like that? 97,000 kids have tested positive. That was such a shock to me because I had heard kids really don't get it. If they do, they're all going to be okay. Do you know any details about that percentage of kids that did get it? Are they all doing okay? Do you have any deaths?
I don't know about the mortality and the morbidity right now in that group. That was just in 2 weeks. So about 100,000 new cases in pediatric kids just in 2 weeks. And I can guarantee you that number is actually much higher. We don't really test kids that often. They're usually asymptomatic. They have very mild symptoms, but they're still shedding this virus. So that is going to artificially be low no matter how good we are about testing right now. Mm-hmm. That's what we're worried about right now is sending these kids to school, then sending them home. And it's not the kids so much we're concerned about. Obviously we are, but it's their grandparents, their parents, when their parents then go to work, who they're spreading this to.
Yeah, right. We're just going to have to be extremely careful because most of Americans want the kids back in school, but we want to do it safely. But it is true, though, that when the kids get it, they don't have you said it's just minimal side effects, right? If they even see those at all.
Well, so that's majority of them. So the likelihood of death and the likelihood of critical illness is lower, but it's possible. I mean, a 7-year-old just died in Georgia with no medical problems. We hear about this and we see it all the time. Kids get sick. They get multi-system inflammatory syndrome from this. They can get ill from this. The likelihood is just lower. So they're not immune to this. They definitely can fall ill.
It's not really the case that most parents want their kids to go back to school and they want it to go safe. There's a lot of mixed feelings on this. I think the most recent poll shows maybe a plurality want a hybrid situation. Next biggest is all online, and then a very small percentage want all in school. And the fact is that there's a lot of reason to believe that the hybrid situation is actually less safe for the people who are most at risk, which are teachers and parents, and then grandparents. This came up on Friday night when I did Hayes. I spoke to a public health policy person, a pediatrician. There has been a total failure to prioritize the danger to different cohorts of kids who go to school, and a total failure to prioritize the needs of different cohorts to go to school. I'm now of the mind that really what should have happened is No high school kids go into school. There's no option for a hybrid. They're all remote learning. And I would just put an asterisk. There are kids with special needs who need in-person schooling. So putting that aside for the moment, because you can either service them with with people going to their homes, or perhaps them going into certain situations. But just generally, for the general population, typical kids, typical learning, no high school students go to school. I would say probably maybe sixth graders go to school, but seventh and eighth graders, at least half of middle school. I know people do it differently in different states in terms of the way it breaks down in junior high, but half of middle school students also all remote. And then you have elementary school kids go in every day, but you use the facilities of the closed high schools and you use the facilities of the closed middle schools, and you use them so that you can have smaller class sizes. And you use some percentage of the teachers who teach the upper schools as basically almost like moderators or monitors. So at an elementary school, they offer you 2 days a week, 3 days every other week. You have the real teachers, the teachers who teach elementary school kids, teach 2 days and 3 days a week, alternating. And then on the other days, the kids go into, again, a single class. That's where they eat. And that's what's happening with the elementary schools. And they're there with a teacher who is used to teaching older kids and basically just moderates them and follows the curriculum that is going from the regular teachers. But to mix these networks doesn't make any sense. The hybrid system doesn't make any sense. And it only is there to spread out to diminish the class size. And high school students just, they transmit it easier, and their need for in-class schooling is less. But we would never get to that because there has been a complete failure of our government and, frankly, I mean, to our media. But I don't know how in any situation you could have the president of the United States going out there spewing this stuff, or any leader of any country in the entire administration spewing just misinformation, and any other sector of society getting it right. It's just not, it's hard enough to do this when everybody's doing everything right. Never mind, there is an active political party that basically spent the first 4 months of the pandemic in total denial of this thing being real. It's stunning. It's stunning.
It sounds like you've got it all figured out.
Well, maybe, but the problem is I don't. I mean, I can tell you, like, you know, I think there's a lot of parents who are just like, Cuomo's not going to open up schools in New York State. They are, and certainly, you know, New York State now has a below 1 R naught, is my understanding, which means that for every one person who catches it, they are not, they're transmitting it to less than one person. So if 10 people get it, they're only transmitting it to like 8 or 9 people, as opposed to 12 or 15 or 20 or 30 people. So this context in New York is the best context you could hope for. But once we go inside, once things get cold, it's going to be a real problem.
Yeah. It's almost like regular dads like you should have more of a say in what goes on in the school reopenings.
You get an option, but I don't blame. They're working against. Look, 44% of people want a mix of in-person and online instruction, right? So how do you sell this notion to parents? Only 16% want all in-person classes. It's just the general public does not have the information, because the general public does not have time to go and read this stuff. And they're looking for cues from their leaders of their society. And
yikes
is it.
I will say I am 100% on board with canceling middle school. It is a horrible experience that no one should have to go through.
And the other thing is, like, you know, people people have said to me, like, this must be a really tough time to be a high school student. And of course, like, the kids in general are having, this is incredibly difficult on them. But in terms of like communication, I feel like my daughter's been training for this for years. Like the ability to maintain her friendships through Insta and Snap and FaceTime. And, boys through their PlayStation, group games. I mean, it's not sufficient, but it's like, I think it would have been much harder for us when we were kids to, in high school, to miss out on, like the socialization, because it all happened obviously in person, some of it on phone, but you can only do so much. So
I had AOL Instant Messenger.
Oh, all right. Well, I did not.
I would have loved it. I mean, I don't know if it would have been good for me necessarily, but I would have loved. I would have just been playing Xbox 360.
Yeah,
Holy
and
crap.
I could exclude the bullies from my AOL chats.
There are no House votes until the week of September 14th. This is according to Steny Hoyer. House is in session for only 13 days before Election Day.
What?
My God.
That seems bad.
Yep.
Like, why?
I don't know if they're using it as leverage and maybe they call people back, but
I mean,
wow,
you can't miss out on vacation.
No, you got to
Got to get to Martha's Vineyard sometime.
Indeed.